heaven, the afterlife. This is probably not something you think a whole lot about on a regular basis. But in a sense, this is what all Christianity is building to. As Paul said, we are running a race, and we're to run in such a way to win the prize. And heaven is the prize. So it's important to talk about because it affects our hope for the future. When I was a pastor, I encountered people with a lot of questions about heaven. Rightfully so. One of the main questions I always heard was, will I recognize my loved ones in heaven? And moreover, will our relationship be the same as it is now? Will my spouse recognize me as my spouse? Will my parents still recognize me as their son? And what does the Bible have to say? Let's take a look. Attention, bargain shoppers. Okay, so first question, will we recognize our loved ones in heaven? And to answer this question, we can take a look at some passages in Scripture where people have died and then interacted with the living. We can look first in Matthew 17, where Jesus takes some of his disciples up to a mountaintop in a famous story called the Transfiguration. And while they're on the mountaintop, we're told, just then there appeared before them Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. Moses and Elijah were hugely important historical figures in their society, and they had died hundreds of years before Jesus was born. It would be like today somebody talking with Abraham Lincoln or something like that. Now, we're not told exactly what they talked about, but the funny thing is in Matthew 17 we're told, Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. To which Jesus replied, idiots. So here's an example of 2 people retaining their identity after they've passed away. They were still Moses and still Elijah. We can also look at Jesus himself. Jesus died and was resurrected from the dead. Many people don't realize this, but he wasn't raised from the dead and then just flew away into heaven, like Neo at the end of the Matrix trilogies. He actually hung out and did stuff. He was with his disciples for quite some time after he was resurrected. He ate with them. They were actually concerned that he might be a ghost, so to put their minds at ease, he ate a piece of fish just to prove that he actually was who he said he was. In Luke 24, we're told, he showed them his hands and feet. While they still did not believe it, because of the joy and amazement, he asked them, do you have anything here to eat? They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence. So this shows that not only did his students, did his friends recognize him, but he also had a physical body. He wasn't just some non-corporeal being floating around in space. And we will also have physical bodies after we die, but not exactly the same ones. We'll get an upgrade. In 2 Corinthians 5:1, we're told, for we will put on heavenly bodies. We will not be spirits without bodies. While we live in these earthly bodies, we groan and sigh. But it's not that we want to die and get rid of these bodies that clothe us. So based on Scripture, it appears as though we will recognize our loved ones, our friends, and our family in heaven. But will those relationships be the same? Will we maintain those relationships in heaven? Will my spouse still see me as my spouse? Will my kids still see me as their dad? Will my dog come running up to me as if he knows me? If you want to watch more on will our pets be with us in heaven, check out the video here. And this question is a little more complex to answer. There's a story in the book of Matthew that I'll share with you. But first, a little context. Teachers of the law, the religious leaders of the day, were not huge fans of Jesus for a variety of reasons. And so they were always trying to get Jesus to look bad in front of crowds of people. Kind of like how if a politician nowadays had a gaffe, and then they'd create memes about it, and it would be everywhere making fun of them. This is what they were trying to catch Jesus in. They were trying to trip him up. And so this was their plan. In the Jewish culture of the day, it was tradition for if a man had a brother, and his brother died, it was that man's responsibility to marry his wife, to bring her into the family. And the main reason is because women weren't allowed to hold jobs in that day. So if you were widowed, you had no income, you were basically living on the street. So this tradition was a way of supporting your family, supporting those women. And so the Jewish leaders come to Jesus and they ask him in front of everybody, now there were 7 brothers among us. The first one married and died, and since he had no children, he left his wife to his brother. The same thing happened to the second and the third brother, right down to the 7th. Finally, the woman died. Now then, at the resurrection, whose wife will she be of the 7, since all of them will have been married to her? So they didn't believe in the resurrection, and they were trying to get Jesus to look silly. But Jesus says something something interesting to them. He says, "You are in error because you do not know the scriptures or the power of God. At the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven." I feel like that requires some explanation. So obviously not everything found in this life is going to carry over into the next life. And this is a good thing. It doesn't diminish marriage in this life, but it points to more fullness that's going to be coming. 1 John 4:16 tells us, "God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. God is love, and all who live in love live in God, and God lives in them." So think about it like this. God is love. He is pure love, not human love. Not love distilled with selfishness, brokenness, with wants, codependency, or desire. He is pure love, and he loves the church, us, you. So picture this love you might have for a significant other. Intimacy, closeness, trust, companionship, love. Now imagine you get those same feelings by being in a relationship with God. Perfect God, better than anything you've ever experienced. Additionally, imagine that you have those same feelings, that closeness, that intimacy with everyone around you in heaven. All believers, with all your brothers and sisters. You can't imagine it. It is unimaginable. But you can see how in a context like that, this earthly need for family, for small in-groups, kind of goes away when you have that same love for everybody. We're shown that yes, you will recognize your loved ones in heaven. I can imagine smiling and laughing with them, telling stories about our life back when we were living it up. And that intensity of love that we have for them, we'll also have for everybody else there, for all our brothers and sisters alongside us in heaven. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you found that helpful. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe. It does help out the channel. If you want to comment below, I do read all the comments, although it may take me a while to respond to you. I'll also leave the verses in the description below that I used today. My name is Adam. This is Bargain Bin Theology, and remember, you get what you pay for.